Alrighty. Hey crew, thank you very much for jumping on. As you will know, over the past couple of videos, we've been chatting around the ideation side of things, how to come up with an app idea and how to sort of make it a reality. And then last week we had a bit of a chat around the design and why design and branding is so important when it comes to building an app. But I'm very fortunate to be joined by Anthony, our tech lead here at Moonward. Mate, how you doing?
Good, good. Happy to be here.
Yeah, likewise. You're a very travelled man. You've lived many lives.
Yeah.
Technology and code is the life you're living at the moment. Why code?
Well, I used to be a musician.
Yes.
And I, enjoyed the freedom that life sort of gave me, and it enabled me to be creative. And I feel much the same way about technology and about programming. Just like I can express myself through music, I can also express myself through code. I think a lot of people think it's very cut and dry when you're writing software, but there's a huge amount of personal like you can really put your fingerprint on a piece of code that you're writing. Like no two people will ever solve the same problem the same way when they're writing code.
Yeah. And how did you find the transition from music, which I imagine from a lifestyle perspective is, like you said, there's quite a lot of freedom, I assume, comes with music, and your hours are very, very different, I guess. Transitioning into the code world where it's a little bit more traditional.
Yeah, well, it's actually I really like having the structure. It's good to go to bed at a reasonable hour and get up at a reasonable hour and have a central place, to come to every day and see the same people every day. It's good. It's a nice change from the sort of chaotic life of being a musician.
Yeah, for sure. And like I mentioned at the start, so you're the tech lead here at Moonward. In a nutshell, what does that mean?
I'm responsible for ensuring that our devs have everything they need to do their job, to the best of their ability. Enforcing sort of standards in a nice way, making sure that we do have standards and things are code is of acceptable quality for our clients, and implementing any new systems for the development team, across the entire stack, whether it's front end, back end, database design, naming conventions, like just being the central sort of point of call for all of that.
Yeah.
All things dev, basically.
So a lot of our clients come to us because they've got a great idea, but they don't necessarily have the tech expertise to build an app. And one of the biggest things that I see when people walk through the door for the first time is they can often be like super overwhelmed when you chat about naming conventions or APIs or back end and front end or whatever it might be. So if you were to like really simplify it, how is an app actually produced, and where do all of these different members of the team sort of meet in the middle and actually hand over something which users in the world can download and do whatever they want to do?
It's a great question. I think it's really important to sort of demystify that side of things. I'll try my best.
It's the classic case. It's the classic case where you see it in all different industries, where these so-called experts like to overcomplicate things. And I think it's our responsibility as a development team to actually break down those barriers and open the door and be an open kitchen. So whether it's clients or our users or whoever it might be can actually understand what we're doing in the background and why what we're doing is so cool. Yeah.
So I think the good place to start is the database, right? So to me, software products in general are all just about moving data around. You're either storing it somewhere, or you're reading it, you're manipulating it, and really when you boil it down to its core, that's what you're doing. So you need a database. You need to have some place that's safe and secure where you can store the data that your application needs. So we use a lot of relational databases here at Moonward. The best analogy I can give to people, non-technical people, for a database is Excel. So imagine your database is a enormous Excel spreadsheet. Rows, columns, and Yeah, that's a really good analogy. So in order to access that Excel spreadsheet through code, we would write a backend program. So this is a bunch of code that sits on a server, and a server is another sort of technical buzzword that I'm not very... well, I like the word, but it leads to a lot of confusion for people. So a server is just a computer. Yeah. You know, and I think that in itself is a bit eye-opening for some people. So we'd have some code sitting on a computer somewhere. Yeah.
And somewhere you mean like it's gone are the days, or it's very rare that a lot of probably like more so small, medium-sized businesses will have their own server in-house, like their own box running all the time. Yep. So now we would leverage like web services who have remote servers that we can just tap into when we want to.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's another one. Probably a bigger one is the cloud. Yeah. Yeah. If we're talking about cloud computing and cloud servers, it's still, at the end of the day, it's still a computer somewhere. Yeah. It's just not here. Yeah. It's not in-house. You know, so we use a cloud provider, Amazon Web Services, for a lot of our stuff. And yeah, we would use their cloud servers. So there's somewhere probably in Sydney or in America, you know, they've got a big warehouse full of computers, and that's where our code is running. Yeah. So the backend code is its job is to sort of provide an interface for the database to the outside world. Yeah. So we don't want to let people access the database directly. They have to go through the back end. Yeah. And that's a really important sort of concept. The back end is the secure sort of place, secure part of the application. Yeah. And its main job is to provide a clean interface between the outside world and the database. Yeah. So that's like the filter. Yeah. So that's right.
Me as a user, being able to interact with a mobile app, I have to go through that filter, and then our filter checks if I'm allowed in or not.
Yeah, that's right. So a lot of things like authentication and like permissions and things like that, security, a lot of that happens in the back end. Yeah. In that controlled environment. Yeah. Once we get out of the back end, the last piece of the puzzle is the front end. Yeah. So that could be a mobile application, like a native mobile application that you would download from the App Store or the Google Play Store, or it could be a website, like a web application that you access through a web browser. Both of those things are considered front end. Yeah. So from a system point of view, these things are inherently a bit more dangerous than the back end, because they exist sort of out in the world. You know, there's we don't really have a lot of control over what someone's doing in their internet browser. Yeah. So that's why a lot of the security and the really important stuff occurs in the back end in the system that we have control over.
Yeah. So the front end is essentially what the users have access to and what they see. That's the mobile app, that's the website, whatever it might be. And then the back end is almost like the brains of the operation. So if I want to interact with that app, you know, if I want to sign up or if I want to post a photo or like someone's photo, it generally has to process through our brain's trust, which is the back end.
That's right. That's right. And then, so only the back end is allowed to update the database. Yeah. You know, because we control that. We don't want to hand over control or access to our database to anybody, to the outside world. So the back end is that one sort of clean interface between the front end, like our users, which is the most important part about anything. You know, you have to have users, but we have to give them a nice way to interact with our database. And like we said before, the database is the most important part, or you know, whatever your data store is. That's the real core of your application. Yeah. So the back end sort of acts as a mediator between those two things. Yeah,
for sure. And when you research this whole sort of like development space, there's all of these different frameworks and languages and concepts that you have to get your head around. Is it really important that you need to understand all of the different frameworks and languages, or do they all tend to do a very similar thing?
Yeah. No one, to my knowledge, knows everything. I think it's impossible, you know, to learn every language and every framework and be across everything. There's just way too much stuff. Yeah. Generally, like you're right, most of these things do the same job. Yeah. Obviously there's levels to it. You know, certain frameworks and tools could be better than others, but that's not the be all and end all. You know, the most important thing is the product that you're putting out. You might use, you know, the hottest frameworks, you know, that have just come out like 2 weeks ago. But if you don't have a product that's live and servicing users, what's it for? You know, it's all for nothing. So the product is important. The frameworks are really important. You know, we use a lot of frameworks here at Moonward, and you know they're very important to making software quickly. But they're just tools. You know, the tools mean nothing if your product is not good.
It's a great point. Like as a developer, as a tech lead, what do you see as your main responsibility when interacting with our clients?
I think a big part of my job is to sort of demystify this technology space to a lot of our clients. It does nobody like any good that these sort of buzzwords exist. You know, like the cloud and server, and they are necessary. They explain things, but a lot of people suffer from not understanding the space that they're trying to do business in, you know, a lot of our clients. So I feel like that's my primary responsibility, is to sort of demystify what's going on. Yeah,
for sure. Cool. And we're very unique here at Moonward in the fact that we have our whole development team in-house. There's no sort of there's no hiding in the fact that going offshore is generally a lot cheaper when it comes to app development. But what would you say is the biggest benefit that you as a development team have, and also that our clients would experience by coming to a company like ours where everyone is under the same roof, all based in our office here in Brisbane?
Well, I think based on what I said, you know, previously, nobody can understand everything. Nobody knows everything. So the fact that we have our entire team under one roof, we're able to collaborate really quickly and help each other and communicate with each other to learn different things. So you can still do that when you're working online, but it's much more difficult to have that kind of instant like collaboration that we experience daily. You know, so often here at Moonward. Together, our Venn diagram of skills of all of our developers is massive. You know, individually, you know, we do very well, but nobody can cover the entire spectrum. But together, you know, we cover a lot of territory between all of us, because everybody naturally has their own unique set of skills. And that's one of the main things for me. I also think for the mental health of our developers, it's really important. You know, like we often will get lunch together, you know, communicate together, learn together. We have technical meetings where we'll learn new technologies together and share our knowledge. And I think that's really important, and something that I wouldn't trade it for the world.
There's this weird concept at the moment where you want to have like lifestyle freedom, where you can work from anywhere on your laptop. But the biggest thing I'm aware of is I don't want developers writing code for the sake of writing code. You know, they're just sitting in their bedroom all day writing away with no form of engagement with the outside world. And that's what I think is amazing here, is that we can chat to the clients, we can actually chat to the guys who've got a really cool idea and help them achieve whatever they want to achieve. And in my opinion, it means that whatever code we're writing actually has a purpose. And then obviously the community around it. We've got a team of like-minded people who love to chat code, get lunch, go to the gym, whatever it might be, and actually have that balance between creating some really cool software products, but actually, you know, enjoying it along the way.
Absolutely. I think that's really important, you know, because you're at your best when you're at your best work-wise when you're happy. You know, you're fit, you're happy, like you're surrounded by people who care about you, who are your friends. You know, that's so important, like to me, and I know that's important to everybody, like everybody here.
100%, totally. And then another thing that I think around like having the in-house team is that accountability piece. Like if I need something to be done, or if you need something to be done, we're not scheduling a Zoom call and waiting for someone's time zone. You know, we're able to go over to someone's desk, tap them on the shoulder, and then work with them to actually get the thing done. Which I think is so important in this dev space, because the biggest well, one of the biggest things in not just the app development space, but also software as a whole, is this challenge with timeframes. And from your opinion, what do you think this all stems from? Because the industry as a whole is just notorious for really poor timekeeping.
Yeah, it's definitely true. It's definitely true. I think one of the main causes of it is just hidden complexity of compounding features. Yeah, like one feature on its own is fine. It might take a week to develop, but those features usually don't exist in isolation. I wish they did, and I know that a lot of our developers wish they did, but usually a feature will have, it will impact other features. It will rely on other features, so when you add one, you need to build that feature, and then you need to build all those integrations with all the other features. Yeah. So if you were to add lots and lots of features onto each other, it's all those little connections that'll get you. Because the developer might say, okay, well, I can develop this feature just by itself in 1 week, and then maybe I've got 2 more. That's 3 weeks, and they'll say 3 weeks. Yeah. When they come around to do it, it might take 2 months because of all those little interactions between those new features and the existing ones that seem to slip people's minds when they're talking about timeframes. Yeah, for sure. And if you were in, say, a client's shoes, so what approach would you take when it comes to like chatting about features and figuring out what features actually need to be in your app to avoid the 3 weeks becoming 2 months? Yeah, it's a great point. I would really encourage people to be very tough on themselves and very tough on like the features that they want to add. You really want to make sure that what you're adding is absolutely necessary. I think having an app that people are using, like real people that are not your friends or like people that you're paying to test your app, real people using your app should be the number one priority of every single person that wants to create a software product. 100%. That's the most important thing. So you need to get to that point as quick as possible. You might have this huge laundry list of features that you want to add, but most of the time we find that almost all of them could be moved to a later version. They're almost all like not important to getting to the real goal, which is real people using your software product. So I think aiming for that is really, really important. And then once we do get there, a lot of the time your users will tell you what they want out of your product. And we often find that what your users want is different to what you thought they wanted. Obviously what your users want is much more important than what you think they want, because they're the ones that are actually, hopefully paying you money to use your product. So, listening to your users, getting something live quickly, and then once we are making changes, to keep those changes small and iterate, slowly, rather than banking up a lot of changes and then, not seeing something for 3 months, and, we've just released 10 new features all at once. I would much rather be releasing one feature at a time and have a much shorter, release timeline than release a ton of features only like a few times a year. So it would be like focus on the key problem that you're trying to solve and limit the amount of features that you need from day one. Avoid as many assumptions as possible. It's that classic case where people go, it could do this, it could do this, it could do this. Which it completely right. It could do a lot of things. Of course. But it's limiting those assumptions so you can get a product live. And then once it's live, listen to your users, listens to your feedback, and then make decisions based off the data opposed to your assumptions. Yeah, absolutely. And iterating, doing that slow incremental like iteration, rather than banking up a ton of features and sort of dropping them all at once. So how do you build a software product to be ready for that? Like, how do you build a software product that as soon as you go live is ready for those small but frequent updates? Well, I think the main thing for us is testing. Whether that's automated code testing or real people sort of testing that product. It's so important to us here that we test our code and write our code properly, like following the standards that we've set, so that once we do reach a certain milestone, like, okay, we're ready to go live, we can feel confident in the foundation that we've just laid over the past, weeks or months. So that once we go live and, people are giving us feedback, we can focus our time on the new iterations rather than fixing anything that was, done previously.
Yeah.
I would much rather spend a bit more time in the early phase, making sure things are good, so that we don't have to redo them, rather than rushing really, really quickly to get something out and then having to fix it later on. Yeah. I know that's a bit of a dichotomy there, where you want to go as quickly as possible to get something out to the users, but you don't want to do that at the detriment of the quality of your product.
Yeah.
So the way you achieve that is you shrink the scope of your product, by reducing those features.
Yeah.
Because you still want something good, but you need to do it quick. So that means it must be small.
So what would you say to those people who say, I can't shrink my scope because I have to have all of these features in order for my product to be successful?
You probably need less features than you think.
Yeah.
Great. Sometimes you can't. But from my experience, the people need a lot less than they think to go live. And you're, again, making assumptions on behalf of your users. You might think that your product needs this. It's got to have this feature. We can't do without this, otherwise nobody will use it.
Yeah.
Well, has anyone actually used it yet?
Yeah.
Do you actually know that, or are you just assuming that?
Yeah. And in my opinion, it's a great problem to have. If you've got 1,000 users who all say this app is great, but it really needs this feature,
perfect.
You're in a good position.
Yeah.
Because if you're then able to deliver that feature, you're hooking them in, and you're building that client loyalty.
Yeah.
Another question that we get all the time is, how many users can my app have? What are some of the key key aspects to a software product which determine how many users it can have? We've all heard those horror stories where an app gets a heap of users and then all of a sudden something blows up and it's no longer functioning. Mm-hmm. So what are some of the key aspects to actually building a product which can maintain or sustain the amount of users that my product needs?
Yeah, it's a great question. Obviously we would like to have a ballpark when we go live. There's a big difference from what we do in a setup or sort of architectural point of view, if we're looking at tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of users, or maybe we're looking at a very sort of boutique product that only services a few hundred. We make very different decisions based on those things. But we do set up our systems ready to scale here. We through the use of AWS and these cloud providers, we can scale our systems very quickly. When you get to a certain level, you can sort of scale indefinitely. What's going to limit you from scaling indefinitely is cost. So you need to balance that out by making sure that your product has a good business model. If you're expecting lots and lots of users, you're going to need to pay for that scale. So you'll need to figure out where the money is going to come from in order to do that. But in the age of sort of cloud technology and these very powerful cloud providers like AWS, Azure, or Google Cloud, scaling, we can sort of effectively scale indefinitely, as long as you can pay for it.
Yeah. So it's that classic dilemma of, you want to create a mobile app which has enough features to get started, but you also want to create a product which generates revenue, because the more users you have generally means the more resources you need to keep it up and running, and you want to make sure there's not an imbalance between the two.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, of course. So, final question for you, mate. The dev space has some strange sort of stigmas at the moment. Whether it's guys sitting in their bedroom wearing their pajamas, writing code all day, or not being able to communicate in real English, they just talk code. In your opinion, what do you believe are some of the biggest misconceptions about the development space?
I think probably how a lot of people don't understand how creative our job actually is, and how much control we as developers and as humans have over this technology.
Yeah.
You know, like a lot of our clients, they just want the problem to be solved, and we solve it. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
But the way that we go about that is so important and can change rapid or change wildly depending on like which developer is actually working on it.
Yeah.
You know, it's I view development very similar as I view tradespeople. You know, we build things. We might not be building something physical if we're talking about a backend or a database, like a deck or a house extension or something that you can see. But we're building these software products, and there's a lot of similarities between those two things. You know, understanding your tools, you know, managing, you know, your time effectively, working together as a team. No two tradespeople are going to build a house the same way. You know, they're going to go about it different ways using the systems that have, you know, worked for them in the past.
Yeah.
It's exactly the same with technology.
And it's such a good analogy, because it's, for some reason, the development space has gone in this different direction, where if I went to a tradesperson having no understanding of engineering or construction whatsoever and drew on a napkin exactly what I wanted them to build me and said, here's the plans, follow that to the exact T, and they went and built it, like, people would be like, what are you doing? Why are you paying those people? But in the development space, it seems to happen so often, where developers don't feel like they have the autonomy to actually not necessarily challenge a client's idea, but say, hey, look, that's a really great concept. We have a handful of ways of doing it, and here's an alternative which will still deliver the same result. You'll still get the house extension, but we're just going to go about it in a different manner, which enables you to have, you know, the correct foundations or the scalability or whatever you need.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so true. Like, you need to trust, you know, the technical people. You know, that they have your best interest in mind, and sort of listen to them when we're talking about sort of these how the technology space works. But you also need to be, you know, confident in your idea and like have your vision, you know. So it's like most things, there's always a dichotomy like nested in there. You know, you need to be strong, have your vision. You know, if you want your house to look like this, like, this is it. Like, I want it, you know. But if the person that you're hiring has, you know, a lot of experience, and you trust them, and I hope you trust them if you're going to, you know, hire them to do a job for you, there needs to be a bit of a dialogue
100%.
there. You know, it can't just be only the, you know, technical people having their way, and it can't just be just the client, you know, bulldozing everybody and not listening to something. It needs to be a conversation. And that's why, you know, we take our client relationship so seriously here, and we've built that trust, you know, with our clients, so that we can have those conversations. You know, it's not just a one-sided relationship at all.
So it all boils down to communication and building that sort of business relationship, so they can actually, the two parties can actually trust each other and rely on the technical opinion, rely on the cool ideas and the cool concepts that come up, and work together to actually deliver a brilliant product at the end of the day. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think that's why demystifying this technology space is so important, you know, because I've found that once people, or some of our clients that I interact with very often, they might not have, or didn't have at the beginning, any sort of technical knowledge. After a little while, they understand the sort of core principles of software, and they can make really intelligent decisions regarding the future of their software product. You might not be able to understand the code that's being written to build your product, but you can understand the principles of your product, and understand, okay, if I want to add these features, that's what this means, and, you know, I don't want to do this because it's going to cause all these compounding features, and that's going to blow the time frame out. You know, like, those things can be understood by anybody. You don't need to know how to write code to understand those things.
Totally. Beautiful, man. Thanks for your time today. Obviously, if you've made it this far in the video, please give us a like. We would absolutely appreciate it. Chuck us a subscribe as well. I think that's what you say. And we'll continue to have a chat with some of our team members here at Moonward. Listen to very similar to building a mobile app. We'll listen to the feedback that we get. And open to any content suggestions, whether it's lifting the lid on, you know, what the Anthony and the guys are doing behind the wall here. or chatting a little bit more on how to actually build a software product or a mobile app. But yeah, chuck us a like and thanks a lot. Cheers, mate.